Hi everyone, welcome to Build with Shreya. Today we are at the GIIC, which is happening at the XCCA, which is an amazing venue near Brandenburg Gates. And we have a really good line of guests today who we're talking to in depth around innovation that's going to happen with the Indo-German partnership coming along in more of a digital sense. So
Okay.
Irene, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you
It's
very
really good to
much.
have you here. So when I look at your journey, it's super inspiring. You know, you started in academics, researching on GAN electronics, and then went on to start a new space company. So what was that defining moment that inspired you to start your company as it is now?
To get more independence, especially decisions which I can do on my own and not depending on others. Yeah.
But what was your motivation? Like, especially, starting in this domain, was it because you had done enough research in the domain, or what problem statement were you actually looking at when you started the company?
I was actually dreaming of it since I was a child. So space was something I really wanted to go to. And so I managed, even when I was doing the research for gallium nitride, to be in projects which were space dependent. So it was gallium nitride for space. So I was very happy there. And then managed to find startups which were really doing space hardware. And this was a dream. They allowed me to go to the launch site, to the rockets, and test and mount the devices inside. And so I was standing on the upper stage of a rocket. This was so inspiring and so great. And this was, for example, in Russia, which was so historical, in Baikonur, where Yuri Gagarin was actually launching. And I was like, wow, saw his house even there. And I wanted to follow on that. So I worked for these companies for 5 years and then decided to get more independent, to go into different directions. And so I founded my company at the end.
And so, what was this turning point which led you to lead, not just build, but lead your entire company to what it is today?
So during my past jobs, it always turned out that I got a kind of leader position. So I became project lead very fast and had the capability of somehow understanding the process of doing it. So because I had the possibilities to lead several projects, and even when I was changing to aviation company, I again got this project management, project lead position back. And so I knew I was capable of doing it, and I tried it with the company just to find out if this is possible or not as well. Yeah.
And how do you balance, the precision that engineering carries and the amorphous nature of entrepreneurship, which goes all over the place?
I think the balancing is so hard, especially in the beginning. So, of course, at the beginning, I was more into the engineering as well, made all this decision for engineering of the rovers or all the other technologies which we were dealing with. But within time, this business management came more and more into focus for me. And so I had to learn how to do it. I had to go into this, learn more about business, which made things for me more complicated. And also, like, my passion was engineering, and losing it more and more was also a bit complicated, but it became very important. Of course, if you want to have a company, you need to understand business, otherwise this won't work.
So, when we talk about space technology, it is very hard to innovate in isolation. So, how do you think platforms like GIIC can help foster better partnerships for innovation in space technology?
I think it's always good to that more people and audience can hear what you're doing, because some of the people didn't even have the idea that this type exists. And the rest is always like, it will start from its own. So people will be there and have listened to it and then remember something else, talk to someone else who said, actually, I was looking for something like this. So it's very interesting where at the end this will lead to. But for me, I see meanwhile there is this huge opportunity for Asia, even for Africa as well. And I think it's very important to deal with this, especially India as a country. And I think especially in Germany, they see more and more opportunities for India or with India. And that's why for me it was very interesting to participate here.
Do you see any active areas where India's software engineering talent can complement Germany's physical manufacturing talent and bring in innovation in space technology?
Yes, sure. The thing is that space needs kind of acceleration and has to go faster too, because in the early days it took a long time and cost a lot of money. So optimizing all these and making it accessible faster, this is something which is really important, because before that I also heard like, oh, it's so slow, the whole technology, it will take too much time. And by speeding it up, by kind of joint ventures, this will accelerate everything, also the whole space technology. And now thinking of mining something on the moon, it will even change the whole environment, the business, and also new type of technologies. So it's extremely important to collaborate here.
So, can you share any examples of future possibilities of collaboration of NeuroSpace with any of the Indian companies or partnerships that you really look forward to?
So we are, for example, working on swarm technology. So the rovers, which are like very small, up to 50 centimeters, but can be scaled up, they have to work in a swarm habit. And there are different types of swarm capabilities. And so the training of it takes a lot of time, as we are still a small company. So speeding up this is very important, because if you live in a harsh or want to work in a harsh environment like the moon, which is not just accessible, it's you need time to get there, and the whole condition is so hard that humans are actually not so much capable and not in this huge amount to live there. So what you need is to create an autonomous world, which has to be completely working fluently autonomous. Mm-hmm. And therefore, for example, software is extremely important and AI is important. Mm-hmm. So decision making by autonomous driven systems, this is something which is the future for space technology. And also, if you then want to go even further to Mars or other, how to say, there are even belts where you can mine, and which might consist of even more important materials. So all these things have to become very autonomous. Mm-hmm. And that's why the technology is already changing and we need this.
Operationally running a space tech company would have its own challenges. So, what are some of those lessons that you have learned along your journey working cross border with the different partners and different global institutions?
So, the highest border is, of course, the political borders. For example, we worked with NASA, which it was only possible because we worked with the German Space Agency and NASA, who signed an agreement at the end. So the first thing is the political border or boundary, which have to be lowered down to make this type of collaboration possible. And also giving a kind of confidence that it's not too unstable, so that whatever you do, your IP is being protected as well as the IP from the other part, and also that it can go on that way. This is really important.
So when I was reading about NeuroSpace's journey, it wasn't just a story. It seemed like science was turning into like a fantasy land, right? So what are some of the innovations you're superbly excited about and you're really looking forward to? Maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, are there some fantastical situations that come to your mind that, okay, what if we can do that as NeuroSpace?
well, we want to be one of the leading parts here for this autonomous city. So we want to collaborate, and I hope we can do it with, with many countries together. I think this is the most important thing, that it's not like one alone, but having a kind of joint capability which accelerate things even faster. And it's important to collaborate, to do all these things together, and then being or playing one of the major roles there, for example, for this autonomous keeping up the maintenance of the the base on the moon. This would be something very great if we start to set up things with our rovers, create this robotic part there. This is something which we aim for. Yes.
No, amazing. I think what you mentioned is that right now, as space agencies work in silos, even though, the space is actually shared by the whole world. So I think innovation, if done collaboratively without the political borders, can really bring in the new age of innovation in space technology. If I were to ask you about certain machine learning applications that you immediately see in your field that software companies from across the world can look at in terms of use cases, what would those be?
For us, it is important. Machine learning is one of the major parts for our system. We are already training our system to get autonomous. So this is nothing is possible without machine learning. So it starts with the pattern recognition, like what is this? If you're on the moon, for example, the sun, because you don't have any atmosphere, is so bright and it just hits the surface, which will totally reflect everything, that you can only distinguish between black and white, actually. So the rover, actually, if you look at the image, cannot immediately detect if this is a hole, a stone, or a shadow. So this has to be taught with machine learning. And there are some simulation environment where you can do it. So you can do it virtually. But there are also facilities which simulate the moon conditions. So you can also train it here on Earth with this similar, some kind of area. So in a very physical way, so that it starts to learn. So what we are doing is now it has to decide what type of object it is. So will I fall in there? Can I manage to drive over it? Or do I have to find another path through this? And this is something where machine learning is extremely important. You cannot do it without. And then comes more things, more and more, the decision of the technology itself. For even if there is an incident and so on, what type of decisions should be done by the machine? Because you always have the latency to control your device from Earth. In ideal case, you can send a command within seconds. But in worst case, it is on the other part, and you are on the other part of the world. So you have to wait for hours or even days to get back into contact. So within that time, machine learning is something which is important, that you train your system to at least make a decision which won't bring your system into danger. So yeah.
So space earlier used to feel distant, something like that only billion-dollar companies or agencies could really make an impact in. So how are smaller satellites and modular systems changing economies of scale for space technology?
Oh, the impact was so huge. It started so innocent and actually not even really capable for people what is going to happen. So about 2 decades ago, a university in America too were inventing the CubeSat. This small size satellite, which is roughly 10 by 10 centimeters. It's a cube and which was stacked with a standardized PCBs, so electrical devices, which each of them got their, their own ID. So you are the onboard computer, you are the power supply, and so on. So, and everything has fit into this small dimension. It was covered by solar panels, and they managed to launch it. And actually, they wanted to get space more accessible for the students so that they can put hands on how to build a satellite, what is important for a satellite. But the thing was, because it was standardized, and they made it work, and the systems at the same time became more miniaturized, so everything got smaller. It was affordable. They used COTS components, so commercial off-the-shelf components, and they have qualified it based on the mission, on system level. So what happened is that you were able to increase the satellite by size and therefore add payload in there. So what you need to make the satellite run is just this small, but at the same time, you could add a lot of payload and gave the satellite a huge variety of functionality. So they have created a satellite platform. And this brought up this demand for launching more and more satellites, because with this you could create a constellation, and you had a lot of business models suddenly which were affordable. And this had led to the fact that many countries who couldn't afford their own space agency or even space program suddenly were able to launch a satellite. And so a lot of so-called free world countries were suddenly having their own satellite. And this made space suddenly accessible. And at the same time, it had created more and more demand for launching satellites. So all the launch vehicles, which were actually not made for this amount of satellite, had to redesign. And suddenly companies like SpaceX came up. And they are now launching huge amount of satellites. Also, the Indian PSLV, it was suddenly, I think there was some time they hold the record about 106 satellite launch in one mission. So this was something so special, which was actually, if you really think about it, was created with this CubeSat. So something which was created for students had suddenly changed the whole space environment and created something which is now called NeuroSpace. So you can see how important this is. Something which looked so innocent suddenly is now ruling a huge part of space.
So when more and more women start getting involved in spaces like aerospace and space technology, it's not just who's at the table that's changing, but also what's being discussed. So what is your perspective on what women bring to leadership roles in your industry and your area of expertise?
So I think there are two things which have to be marked out here. One thing is that actually we as women get less respect because we are too careful in the way we are talking and discussing and negotiating. So one thing I have learned in the past is to get really confident. If you want to talk with men and have to negotiate, you have to be very confident, you have to be very prepared. And you have to accept, which actually women are not taught from the beginning on, that people might not like you anymore. So you have to get rid of this, that everyone should love you. This is not the thing. You know, it is okay that people don't like you at the end. And you have to accept it, because this is not about that. Okay, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the only one or whatever. This is actually, it's important that you have to be confident. You have to be well prepared, and you have to accept that people don't like you. And the second thing is, of course, we as women have our own quality, which is like, we have our own way of determination, and like, we don't give up so fast, and we manage, even though we don't get a lot of support, still to keep up things. And I have the feeling those female founders I know, they have a lot of patience, and this is important. So it is okay. It takes time. So you have to be patient. Don't give up. And the quality which we bring then at the end is that we are female. You know, we look different, we act different. We don't have to imitate the males. We don't have to be like them. We don't have to look like them. But we are there in our own way. And actually, there is no difference. The difference is that we make it on our own. We try to put in differences.
Yeah, I think it's our own acceptance that
Yes.
needs to come in.
Yes.
That we are like this. This is how we function.
Yes.
This is how we are, and this is how we're going to show up in the world.
Yes. So I might look different. I might wear different clothes, and it's okay to look extremely female, to put on makeup. That's not the thing. I still can be a very smart engineer, and this won't change you. Makeup won't change you, and the clothes won't change you. Everything is in here. So you have to prepare yourself for it. You have to be capable of understanding what you're talking about, what everyone else is telling to you. And you have to distinguish about what is helpful and what not. And then do it. But there is no actual difference. This is my experience. You just have to be tough enough, to accept that people are now negotiating in a different way, not like be polite to you as they would be normally to a female.
Yeah.
But they are now accepting you because they are now rude, because they are now discussing in a very harsh way with you, which is great. This is the biggest compliment, actually.
So what's one belief that keeps you grounded, even though you're reaching for the stars quite literally?
I learned one thing. I have to distinguish between work, professional, and me as an individual. So when I'm with my friends, I'm the shy girl I ever was. And I don't try to present myself and so on. I feel even insecure. And also I'm married with my husband. He's also an engineer. And it's both type of respect we pay to each other, but also letting myself be relaxing, be vulnerable. And that's okay. That's my personal life. And at the same time, I'm a different person, which is absolutely acceptable and which you need to have if you are in a professional level dealing with others. So don't be too much into this feeling things, don't try to be too emotional or whatever. This is not where it has to belong to. And so, yes, it has changed my personality. And on the other hand, it did not, because I managed to try to create two different personalities, which has been needed. And I didn't change myself when I'm with my family or with my friends. And I just said, I will just lock this up. This is over now. In German, we have a word which is called Feierabend. It's like work is over and I can be myself again. And this is something which you can learn actually within time, and you will figure out how important this is to distinguish between work, professional, and private life.